Hi, my name is Anna Louise. I'm 65 years old, and I never imagined that the most humiliating night of my life would also be the one that changed everything. It was my birthday, a Friday evening, and my son, Jason, had called that morning with a cheerful voice he usually saved for when he wanted something. "Mom," he said, "we want to celebrate you tonight. Big time. You deserve it." Should I have been suspicious? Maybe. Jason hadn't been especially attentive in recent years, not since Kiara came into the picture. But I'm a mother. We hope, we believe, we forgive, and I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, things were turning around. I put on my favorite navy blue dress, the one my late husband Robert always said made me look elegant. I curled my silver hair, did my makeup carefully, and wore the pearl earrings Robert gave me on our 20th anniversary. I wanted to look good for my family. When I arrived at the Bella Vista restaurant, one of those upscale places downtown where we used to celebrate birthdays and graduations, I spotted Jason and Kiara already seated near the window. Jason looked tense, fidgeting with his napkin and avoiding eye contact. Kiara, on the other hand, was glowing. Red dress, hair perfectly styled, a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Happy birthday, Anna," she said far too brightly. She leaned in for a hug that felt faker than a $3 bill. Jason got up and gave me a kiss on the cheek. "Happy birthday, Mom." We sat down and ordered dinner. For a little while, everything seemed normal. We chatted about the weather, Jason's job, Kiara's latest plans to redecorate the house they lived in, the house they thought was theirs, the house I'd been quietly paying for behind the scenes for years. Then came the moment Kiara made her move. She folded her napkin neatly, smiled sweetly, and said, "Anna, Jason and I have been talking, and we think it's time to have a serious conversation." There was something in her tone, something sharp and rehearsed, that put me instantly on edge. The way she said Jason and I like they were a united front against me. I glanced at Jason. He gave a small, nervous nod. It was obvious they'd practiced this. Kiara cleared her throat. "We're worried about you. You've had some forgetful moments lately." "Forgetful?" I said. "My mind is sharper than ever. I handle my own finances. I cook. I clean. I read 3 books a week. But I stayed quiet. I wanted to hear how deep this rabbit hole went." "We've found the perfect place for you," Kiara continued, her voice laced with condescension. "It's called Sunset Gardens. It's a beautiful assisted living facility. You'll have people around, medical staff, social activities. A nursing home," I said softly. "An assisted living home," Jason corrected quickly, finally speaking. "Mom, we just want what's best for you." I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised on my own after Robert died 10 years ago, the boy who used to run to me after nightmares, who used to beg me to read him bedtime stories, who once told me he'd marry me when he grew up because I was the most beautiful woman in the world. Then Kiara, clearly thinking she'd won, said with a triumphant smile, "We've already made arrangements. You can move in Monday. We'll take care of packing everything up." That was it. Something in me snapped, not with sadness, with clarity. I saw everything crystal clear. Years of subtle manipulation, the distance Kiara had built between Jason and me, the family dinners I hadn't been invited to, the way conversations died the moment I walked into a room. "So this is my last dinner as a free woman," I said calmly. Kiara's smile widened, thinking I was surrendering. "Don't look at it like that, Anna. Think of it as the beginning of a new chapter." I took a slow sip of wine, then set the glass down and looked her dead in the eye. "You're right, sweetheart. This is my last dinner with you." Her smile twitched. "What do you mean?" "And it's your last dinner living in that house," I said flatly. The silence that followed could have cracked glass. Jason blinked, confused. Kiara's face lost all its color. What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice cracking. I smiled, the first genuine smile of the evening. "You'll find out tomorrow." I stood up, placed enough cash on the table to cover the check, and walked out. As I left, I could hear Kiara whispering furiously at Jason, but their voices faded behind me as I stepped into the night. Back home, I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by family photos and a lifetime of memories. Then I picked up the phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. "Mr. Martinez," I said when he answered. "This is Ana Louise. I need to meet with you tomorrow morning. It's time my family learns the truth about what I own." I poured myself another glass of wine and raised it to no one. Tomorrow, Jason and Kiara would learn that the confused old lady they thought they could shove into a nursing home was actually the legal owner of the house they lived in, and a whole lot more than they ever imagined. The next morning was crisp and cold, with the kind of sharp air that wakes you up whether you like it or not. I woke up early, like I always do. I made myself a strong cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, reviewing the documents I'd kept tucked away for years. Deeds, bank statements, legal contracts. My husband Robert and I had been smarter than anyone gave us credit for. They all thought I was just a retired school teacher living off a small pension. They didn't know I'd spent the last 20 years quietly investing in real estate, that I owned not only the house Jason and Kiara lived in, but several other properties across town. I'd kept it all quiet, even from Jason, especially from Kiara. At exactly 9 a.m., Mr. Eduardo Martinez, our family lawyer for over 2 decades, rang the doorbell. "Good morning, Ana Louise," he said as he set his briefcase down at the table. "I take it last night didn't go well." I poured him a cup of coffee. It went exactly as I expected. It's time Eduardo had watched Kiara manipulate Jason for years. He'd helped me draw up legal protections and backup plans just in case. We'd always hoped we'd never need them, but here we were. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "After what they pulled last night?" There's no going back. I told him everything. The birthday dinner, the nursing home announcement, Kiara's smug little speech. Eduardo listened in silence, just nodding occasionally. "All right," he said, flipping open his case. "Let's start with the eviction notice. Since you're the rightful owner of the house on Maple Street, you're within your rights. Jason and Kiara had lived in that house for 5 years, thinking it was theirs. What they didn't know was that 3 years ago, when they fell behind on their mortgage, I quietly stepped in and paid off their debt to save them from foreclosure. In exchange, the bank transferred the deed to me. They never asked how they got to keep the house. I never told them." "How much time do they have to move out?" I asked. "Legally, 30 days, Eduardo said, "but we can shorten it to a week if we file under breach of lease." "Lease?" I raised an eyebrow. He smiled slightly. "One we're going to sign right now, dated 3 years ago. It includes a clause that allows for immediate termination in the case of verbal threats or elder abuse. I signed the papers without hesitation. As I did, my mind wandered back to the first time Jason brought Kiara home, almost 8 years ago. She had been sweet, charming even. "Your mom's amazing," she'd gush that night at dinner. "I hope we can be really close." And at first, she seemed genuine. She'd help me cook, ask about Robert, pretend to care about our family stories. But it didn't last. First came the passive-aggressive jokes. "Jason's a bit of a mama's boy, don't you think?" Then the concerned criticism. "Ana, are you sure it's safe for you to be driving at your age?" Or, "I just worry about you living alone. What if you fall?" Jason started repeating her words like they were gospel. Slowly but surely, my son, the boy I raised alone after Robert passed, was slipping away. "Done," Eduardo said, tucking the papers into a file. "We'll serve them Monday morning. I've also prepared letters to the bank canceling the automatic payments you've been making on their behalf." That was another secret. For the past few years, I'd been covering more than just their mortgage. I paid for Kiara's car. I footed the bill for their anniversary vacation. I even paid off a credit card or two, without their knowledge. I thought I was helping. They thought they were entitled. We'll also be cutting utilities, Eduardo continued. All the accounts are in your name. You're legally allowed to shut everything down. Electricity, gas, internet, the works. I nodded slowly. I never thought I'd be doing this to my own son. You're not doing this to him, Eduardo said. You're doing this for yourself. After he left, I sat alone in the kitchen with my second cup of coffee and stared out the window. I knew Kiara would act fast. She wasn't the type to let go without a fight. I had to stay ahead of her. I called Jason. He answered on the third ring. Hey, Mom. Are you okay? You left so quickly last night, he sounded genuinely worried. For a moment, my resolve almost cracked. This was still my boy, my baby. Jason, I said carefully, I need you to come over. Just you. There's something we need to talk about. It can't wait. He hesitated. Well, Kiara and I were actually going to tour some assisted living places near Sunset Gardens. There it was. Even after humiliating me, they were still moving forward with the plan like I didn't even have a say. No, Jason. This can't wait. Come now, alone. If you bring Kiara, I won't open the door. Another long pause. You're scaring me, Mom. Good, I said and hung up. 45 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Jason stood there looking lost, older than his 40 years, pale and uneasy. Hi, Mom. Come in. He sat on the living room couch, the same couch where he'd watched Disney movies with me as a kid, where he used to fall asleep curled up beside me during thunderstorms. I sat across from him in Robert's favorite armchair. Jason, I began, there's a lot you don't know about me, about your dad, about our finances. If this is about the nursing home, it's about your house. I cut him off. He blinked. What about it? You don't own it. Yes, we do. We've got the mortgage. No, Jason. You had a mortgage. 3 years ago, when you were about to lose the house, I stepped in. I paid it off. The deed was transferred to me. You've been living in my house ever since he stared at me, jaw slack. I handed him the legal documents Eduardo had left. He read them in silence, eyes darting across the pages, his face drained of color. This can't be real. When I helped you, I believed I was doing it for my son. I thought you'd understand eventually. But after last night, I don't think I have a son anymore. I have a man who wants to lock me away so he can sell my house. Mom, no. When was the last time you visited me without asking for money? When was the last time you called just to say hello, to see if I needed anything? He looked down at his hands. On Monday, I said, standing, you'll receive official notice. You have 1 week to move out. You can't do this. We're family. I turned to face him. Last night, in that restaurant, you made it very clear I'm not your family anymore. Now you get to live with that decision. Sunday morning came with a flurry of chaos. I was sipping coffee and reading the paper when my phone started ringing. Unknown number. I answered. Is this Ana Louise? The woman's voice was sharp, aggressive. Yes. Who's this? This is Carmen, Kiara's sister. What the hell are you doing to my sister and your son? Ah. So Kiara had launched her campaign. Good morning, Carmen. I didn't know you had my number. Kiara gave it to me. She's devastated. You're kicking them out of their home like criminals. How could you be so heartless? I leaned back in my chair, calmly preparing myself for the performance I knew was coming. Did she tell you about the birthday dinner? She said you overreacted. That she and Jason were just trying to help you. That you've been confused lately, maybe showing signs of dementia, and they were trying to protect you. There it was. The story she'd probably been planting for months. I'm 65, Carmen. Not 95. I drive. I manage my finances. I read novels faster than most people can skim the back cover. She said you forget people's names. Sometimes you don't recognize folks. Lies, I snapped. Has Kiara ever mentioned a single example of that happening? Silence. Exactly. That call was just the beginning. By noon, I'd heard from Kiara's mother, one of Jason's cousins I hadn't seen in years, Kiara's best friend, and even a former colleague from the school where I'd taught, all sharing the same concern. Was I okay? Was I becoming senile? Was I really throwing my family out onto the street? 12 calls, all scripted, all rehearsed. Then the doorbell rang. A woman I didn't recognize stood outside, well-dressed, late 60s, clipboard in hand. Are you Ana Louise? Yes. I'm Dr. Patricia Vega. I'm a geriatric specialist. Your daughter-in-law reached out. She's concerned about your mental health and asked me to evaluate you. I felt like I'd been slapped. I didn't request an evaluation, I said flatly. I understand that. But sometimes, when someone is experiencing cognitive decline, they may not be aware. I cut her off. Dr. Vega, I appreciate your concern, but unless you have a court order, you're not stepping 1 foot into my house. Her smile faltered. If Kiara truly believes I'm mentally unfit, she can pursue that claim through legal channels. Until then, I'm fully capable of making my own decisions. The doctor studied me. I could see the gears turning in her head. My posture, my tone, my eyes, all clear, focused, firm. You seem very aware, she finally said. I am. And I'm also done being gaslit in my own home. She left and I immediately called Eduardo. They're escalating, I told him. Doctor visits, fake concern, a PR campaign. This is serious, he said. If they get enough people to claim you're mentally unfit, they could try to take legal control over your finances. Can they do that? It's difficult, but not impossible, especially if Jason supports her. My stomach turned. My son, my own flesh and blood, could be persuaded to testify against me. We need documentation, Eduardo said, proof that you're mentally sound. I'll arrange an appointment with your primary care doctor and a neuropsychologist. Today, if possible. That afternoon, I had a full evaluation with Dr. Ramirez, who'd been my physician for 15 years. He ran every cognitive test in the book and laughed when I beat him at a memory game he gave me just for fun. You're sharper than half my staff, he said. I'll write a full report. We also scheduled a comprehensive cognitive screening with a specialist first thing Monday morning. Meanwhile, the phone calls didn't stop. Carmen, Kiara's mother, a neighbor. Even my sister Teresa, who lived in Arizona, called in a panic. Jason called me, Teresa said. He told me you're acting erratically and that you threw them out of the house for no reason. Their house? I repeated bitterly. He said it was their house? Wait, isn't it? I took a deep breath. I'm emailing you some documents. I want you to read everything before making any judgments. That night, I sent her and a few other key family members a file with everything: deeds, bank statements, canceled checks, even audio recordings of some recent conversations with Kiara, secretly made on my phone. Monday morning came, and with it, a knock at the door. A uniformed officer. "Good morning, ma'am," he said. "I'm Deputy Sullivan. I've been asked to serve you with a wellness check." I stared at him. "By who?" "Your daughter-in-law. She filed a report that you may be a danger to yourself or others. Kiara had actually called the police. I invited the officer inside, made him coffee, sat him down at the kitchen table, showed him everything, my medical records, my cognitive assessments, my perfectly tidy home. He listened, nodding, taking notes. "Honestly, ma'am, you seem more competent than half the people I work with. I'm filing this as unfounded." Before he left, he looked at me with something like pity. "Can I give you some advice?" he said. "Consider a restraining order. If they're trying to build a case that you're unstable, you need to protect yourself." "Can I even do that?" with the harassment and false claims you've documented? Absolutely, Eduardo filed the paperwork that same afternoon, and that's when I discovered the real betrayal. That night, as I was organizing old papers in my study, I opened my lockbox and realized some things were missing. Not documents, jewelry. Gone were the diamond brooch that belonged to my grandmother, the emerald earrings my aunt left me, the pearl necklace Robert gave me for our 10th anniversary. Gone. I called Eduardo immediately. Someone's been in my house. Who has access? Just Jason. He still has a key. Eduardo paused. When's the last time you saw the jewelry? About 6 months ago. I wore the pearls on Robert's memorial, and since then, how many times has Jason come over when you weren't home? I felt sick. He stops by all the time, I whispered, to check on things, fix the pipes, test the smoke alarms. I thought he was being helpful. The next morning, Eduardo showed up with a private investigator, Mr. Mendoza. We spent the day visiting every pawn shop in a 30-mile radius with photos of my missing jewelry. We didn't have to look far. At the third shop, the owner recognized the pieces immediately. Yeah, a young guy brought these in a couple months ago, said they belonged to his grandma. He needed cash fast. He even had security footage, clear as day. Jason and Kiara standing at the counter, nervously watching as the items were appraised. My heart broke. They got less than half of what the jewelry was worth. According to the paperwork, they said they needed the money for a spa resort getaway. I remembered the photos Kiara had posted on Facebook back then. Luxury hotel, massages, fancy dinners, all paid for with my family heirlooms. Eduardo gathered every receipt, every video, every bit of documentation. That evening, back at my house, I sat at the table and cried for the first time since this all began. I wasn't crying for the jewelry. I was crying for my son. Eduardo let me cry. Then, gently, he placed a new folder in front of me. Before we wrap for today, he said, you need to see this. Inside were credit reports, bank statements, credit card balances. Jason and Kiara were over $80,000 in debt. Clothes, jewelry, luxury travel, renovations to my house, all paid for with borrowed money. And worse, Jason had been withdrawing money from my checking account without permission. He's listed as a beneficiary on your account, Eduardo explained. When you were hospitalized with pneumonia last year, the bank gave him emergency access. It was never revoked. How much has he taken? Over $10,000. Small amounts, but steady. Hoping you wouldn't notice, I walked to the window. My hands were trembling. When I finally turned back, I said the words I never thought I'd say. Eduardo, I want to press charges. Eduardo didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me carefully, as if making sure I really meant it. Ana Louise, he said gently, if we move forward, there's no going back. Jason could go to prison. I met his eyes, firm. My son, my real son, died a long time ago. I don't know who that man is anymore, but I know what he's done. That afternoon, while Eduardo drafted the criminal complaint, my sister Teresa called me back. Ana, I read everything you sent, she said, her voice cracking. I can't believe this. I'm so sorry I told her about the stolen jewelry, the pawn shop footage, the missing money. Oh my God, she whispered. You have to stop this. You can't let it go any further. I'm not letting it go, I said. Tomorrow I'm filing charges. Against Jason? That man is not my son. My son would never have done this. Teresa was quiet for a long time. Then do what you have to do. That night, my phone rang again. It was Jason. Mama, he said, his voice desperate. We need to talk. I think we've talked enough. Please, you don't understand. Kiara says she can explain everything. I found the jewelry, Jason. I cut him off. Silence. I found the pawn shop. I saw the footage. You sold your grandmother's pearls for a spa vacation. More silence. I can explain. And I found the withdrawals, the ones from my checking account. Every few weeks, you've been stealing from me for almost a year." His voice dropped to a whisper. "How did you know?" "Because I'm not senile, Jason. I'm a 65-year-old woman who's still sharper than you'll ever be." "Please," he said. "We didn't mean to hurt you. We were in trouble. We needed time." "You're out of time. I'm pressing charges tomorrow. Get a lawyer." I hung up. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and the easiest. Because the truth was, I'd been grieving the loss of my son for a long time. I just hadn't admitted it to myself until now. The next morning, at the police station, Eduardo and I met with Detective Silva. We handed over every document, every receipt, every piece of video evidence. He took his time reviewing it all. "Miss Louise," he finally said, looking up from the file, "this is a very strong case. Especially the video footage. What happens now? We'll issue arrest warrants for both Jason and Kiara. We may be able to bring them in by the end of the day." As we walked out of the station, Eduardo placed a hand on my shoulder. "You sure you want to keep going?" I took a deep breath. I'm more sure of this than I've ever been of anything. That afternoon, I got 3 calls in quick succession. The first was from Detective Silva. "We've arrested Jason at his workplace. He's cooperating. He wants to speak with you and Kiara. She wasn't home. According to neighbors, she left early this morning. We're still looking for her." The second call was from Teresa. "Jason called me. From jail. What did he say?" "He wants to talk to you. He says there's more. About Kiara." The third call was the most surprising of all. "Miss Louise," said a familiar voice. "This is Carmen, Kiara's sister." I almost hung up, but something in her voice made me pause. "I need to tell you something about my sister." "Go on." "She called me this morning, completely hysterical. She told me everything about the jewelry, the money, everything, and she's addicted to online gambling. Has been for years." I sank into a chair. Carmen continued. "She's in over her head. Jason didn't know at first, but when he found out, she threatened to destroy him, said she'd accuse him of abuse, said she'd ruin his life." "She told you that?" "She told me everything this morning. She's running scared now, but I think she knew it was over." I sat there stunned. "Jason never hit her," Carmen added quickly. "He's a fool, but he's not violent." He was scared. After I hung up, I sat in the silence of my living room, trying to absorb it all. Jason hadn't just betrayed me, he'd been manipulated, threatened, used. It didn't excuse what he'd done, but it explained how he'd gotten there. That evening, I made a decision. I would go visit him in jail. The county jail was a gray, lifeless place. Jason looked exhausted when they brought him into the visitation room. He'd lost weight. His eyes were hollow. We sat across from each other, separated by a scratched metal table. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then he whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom." I didn't say anything. "I didn't know how bad it had gotten," he continued. "Kiara started gambling a few years ago. Small bets, sports stuff. Then it got worse. Online casinos, thousands of dollars gone in days. And you just let it happen? She told me it was under control, that she'd win it all back. When I found out how deep we were, I wanted to tell you. I really did. But she said if I opened my mouth, she'd ruin me, accuse me of abuse, take everything. You still had a choice, Jason. And you chose to steal from your mother." He lowered his head. "I know." I stared at him. This broken man across from me used to be my baby, my sweet boy who wore superhero pajamas to school and cried when I read Charlotte's Web out loud. Now he was in a jumpsuit, shackled at the wrist. "Do you want me to drop the charges?" I asked. He looked up. "No, I don't deserve that." I nodded slowly. "When I get out," he said quietly, I'm moving away. Starting over. I've already been in contact with a nonprofit that helps families deal with gambling addiction. They're offering me a job. I said nothing. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, he added, but I needed you to know the truth. Kiara, she broke me, but I let her. I stood. You'll have to forgive yourself, Jason. I'm not ready to do that for you. And I left. 6 months later, I woke up in my own bed, in my own house, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to brace myself for another betrayal. Kiara was gone. She disappeared right after Jason's arrest. According to Detective Silva, she likely skipped town the same morning he was taken into custody. A warrant had been issued for her arrest, but frankly, I hoped she stayed gone. Jason was sentenced to 8 months in county jail, followed by 3 years of probation. He was also ordered to pay restitution for everything he stole, from the checking account, the jewelry, even the unpaid utility bills I'd quietly covered for years. His lawyer asked for leniency, citing the emotional manipulation and threats he'd endured. The judge listened and still laid down the law. Stealing from your own mother, the judge had said, is not excused by a bad marriage. I was there in the courtroom that day. Jason looked over at me from the defense table. I didn't return the look, not out of cruelty, but because I was done looking backward. During those 6 months, I changed my life. First, I hired a part-time caregiver, not because I needed medical help, but because I deserved support. Maria came every day from 3 to 7 p.m. She cooked with me, walked with me, laughed with me. She became more of a friend than an employee. Second, I rewrote my entire will. Eduardo made sure it was airtight. All my assets, every home, every account, were designated for a foundation that helps older women suffering from financial abuse. Jason would receive a small lump sum when he completed probation, enough to start over, but not enough to ever take advantage again. Third, and most importantly, I started living. I joined a painting class at the local community center. Turns out, I'm not bad at landscapes. I joined a book club with 3 wonderful women who became real friends. Dolores, one of them, had gone through something eerily similar with her son. One of the hardest things, she told me over dinner one night, is realizing that love doesn't fix everything. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your kid is let them fall. She was right. For years, I had tiptoed around Jason and Kiara, hoping they'd change, hoping I could be patient enough, loving enough, tolerant enough to make it work. But love isn't supposed to cost your sanity or your dignity. One October afternoon, while Maria and I were preparing dinner, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a young woman in a navy blazer holding a file. "Miss Louise," she asked politely. "I'm Laura Morales, a social worker with the Department of Corrections. Do you have a moment to talk about Jason?" I let her in, curious but cautious. Jason's been participating in our rehabilitation program. For the past 4 months, he's been in therapy, working a recovery plan. He's made a lot of progress. That's good to hear. He wants to write you a letter, she said, but he needs your permission to send correspondence. I hesitated. What would be in the letter? Mostly apologies, updates, nothing aggressive or invasive. He said he doesn't expect anything from you. He just wants to be honest. After a long pause, I nodded. He can send it. A week later, the letter arrived. 5 pages, handwritten, no pleas, no excuses. It opened with, "Mom, I don't deserve forgiveness. I know that, but I need you to understand that for the first time in my adult life, I see the truth about myself, about Kiara, about what I did." He wrote about the therapy, about learning what codependency meant, about the way he allowed Kiara's gambling addiction to infect every part of his life, about the fear, the shame, the choices. "When I get out," he wrote, "I'm moving to Colorado. I've accepted a job with a nonprofit that helps families deal with financial abuse. I won't contact you unless you want me to. I just needed you to know I finally see you, not as a bank account, not as a burden, but as the strongest woman I've ever known." He ended with, "I hope one day when you look in the mirror, you see the hero I should have seen all along." I didn't write back. Not yet. But I didn't throw the letter away either. 2 weeks later, Teresa came to visit from Arizona. It was the first time we'd seen each other in person since all of this had started. "You look incredible," she said as we hugged at the airport. "Lighter. Stronger." "I feel free," I said, and I meant it. That weekend, we went out to eat at Bella Vista, the same restaurant where it all started. "Doesn't this place bring back bad memories?" she asked as we sat down. "No," I smiled. "It reminds me of the night I stopped letting other people write my story." Halfway through dinner, the manager came by our table. "Excuse me," he said, "but are you the woman who, stood up to her family here a few months ago?" I tensed. "Yes," I said cautiously. "I just wanted to say, we all admired how you handled yourself. My staff still talks about it. You kept your head high while being treated horribly. That's not easy." He walked away before I could reply. Teresa burst out laughing. "You're a legend." "I guess so," I chuckled. On the drive home, she asked me, "Do you regret any of it?" I thought about it for a long moment. I regret not speaking up sooner. I regret letting them chip away at me for years, but I don't regret standing up. Not for a second. And Jason, I looked out the window. He's a grown man. He made his choices, and now he's living with the consequences. A month after Teresa's visit, I was in the garden planting bulbs for spring when Maria came to the porch. "Miss Louise," she said softly, "there's a young man at the door. Says his name is David. Says he's your grandson." My heart stopped. I don't have grandchildren. Jason and Kiara never had children. At least that's what I thought. I wiped the dirt from my hands and walked to the door. Standing there was a young man, early 20s, dark hair, familiar eyes. "Ma'am," he said nervously, "my name is David." "David Herrera. I'm Jason's son." I stared at him. "What?" "I never knew about you," he said quickly. "My mom and Jason split up when I was a baby. But he found me online a few months ago. He told me about you. Told me everything. He held up a photo, me and Jason from when he was 5. I'd really like to talk." If that's okay, I didn't answer at first. I just stared at those eyes. Jason's eyes. My son's eyes. Finally, I opened the door wider. "Come in, David." "There's a lot we need to talk about, David," and I sat in the kitchen for hours. He told me everything, how he'd grown up with his mother in another state, how Jason had vanished from their lives when he was barely 2, and how he'd never once questioned it, until a few months ago. "He found me on Instagram," David said he wanted to tell me the truth. About himself, about you, about everything that happened. He pulled a small envelope from his coat. He wrote this. "For you. Said if I ever found you in person, I should give it to you." I took the envelope with shaking hands. I didn't open it, not yet. Instead, I looked at David, a young man who looked so much like Jason had at that age. Same nervous smile, same stubborn chin. "You didn't have to come here," I said gently. "I know. But I wanted to. I figured if half of what he told me was true, you deserved better than what you got." He sipped the tea I'd made him, looked around the kitchen. "This place is nice. It feels peaceful." I smiled. It didn't always. Over the next few weeks, David became a regular visitor. He was nothing like Kiara. He didn't expect anything from me. No money, no favors, just conversation, curiosity, a connection. He asked questions about Robert, about the family, about my old career as a school teacher. "I wish I'd grown up knowing you," he said once, while we trimmed the rose bushes in the backyard. "I wish I'd known you even existed," I replied. He was smart, polite, thoughtful. He offered to mow the lawn, fix the screen door. He even brought over a book for the book club, one he thought I'd like. He was right. One afternoon, sitting on the back porch with the sun fading behind us, he said, "Can I ask you something kind of personal?" "Of course." "Do you think there's any chance my dad can come back from this?" The question caught me off guard, not because it was harsh, but because it was filled with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. "I don't know," I said, "but I know he's trying." "That matters." David nodded slowly. "He's different now." He says the time inside forced him to stop making excuses. He needed to stop a long time ago. I think he knows that. I finally opened the second letter from Jason a few nights later. It was short, honest, raw. "I still don't expect anything from you, but I'm trying to be a man my son can respect. Even if my mother never wants to see me again, I hope you know I will spend the rest of my life trying to undo the damage I caused. I've accepted that I may never deserve forgiveness, but I also know I'll never stop earning it." That was the thing with healing. It doesn't always come with a clear resolution. Sometimes it's just learning to breathe again after years of holding it in. A year passed. Jason served his sentence. He moved to Colorado, as he'd promised. He worked at that nonprofit helping families affected by addiction and financial abuse. Every few months, he sent a postcard, never pushing, never asking, just letting me know he was still alive. Denver's cold, but the mountains are beautiful. Helped a woman reconnect with her son today. First time she'd spoken to him in 10 years. Thinking of you. Hope you're painting something beautiful I never wrote back, but I read every word. David stayed in town, finished his degree, got a job at a local tech firm. He came by every Sunday for lunch. "Do you think I should reach out to him?" he asked once. "That's your choice," I told him. "He's your father." "I'm not here to decide how you heal." He nodded. "I just want him to know I turned out okay." You more than turned out okay. David gave me something I didn't realize I was missing, a second chance. Not at motherhood, but at family. One built on respect, not guilt. One that came without strings. On the 1-year anniversary of that infamous birthday dinner, I hosted a gathering at my home. Maria was there, my book club ladies. Teresa flew in from Arizona. Even Eduardo came by bringing a fancy bottle of wine. We laughed. We danced in the living room. We toasted to strength, to boundaries, to peace. At one point, I looked around the room and realized something. This was the life I had always deserved, one not defined by obligation or silence or manipulation, but by choice. My choice. Later that night, I sat alone on the porch, watching the stars. I held the last postcard Jason had sent. "Dear Mom, I don't expect a reply, but if this ever finds its way to you, I hope you're proud of the woman you fought to become." I always was. Even when I didn't act like it, I didn't cry. I just breathed. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. "I'm proud of you too," I whispered into the night, whether he'd ever hear it or not. Because sometimes, closure doesn't come in the form of reconciliation. Sometimes it comes in the quiet knowledge that you survived what was meant to break you, and you didn't just survive, you flourished.